Hello, fellow seekers and student of the Law of One. Today, I want to share something that I started thinking about when I watched this video from Aaron Apke. Aaron Apke is somebody that most of you should be familiar with because his work is just phenomenal and his enlightenment and way of speaking is just commendable. So anybody who watches the Law of One in this channel should be familiar with his work. If you're not, I'm going to leave, of course, a link to the video that I'm referring to today in the description and also here in one of those cards, so you can go watch it because you're going to get more context from this video. The video that I'm talking about is one that Aaron did with the LNL research group, specifically Gary Bean, Austin, forgot his last name, and also Jim McCarthy, of course, last but not least, Jim McCarthy, the scribe of the Law of One, the initial group of Carla, Don, and Jim. So the three of them, Austin Bridge, that's his last name, I just remembered. So, so the video was Aaron interviewing them, or actually it was like a round table where Aaron was covering a bunch of really good questions that he asked his audience, and it was all about the Law of One, of course. And it went for about 2 hours. Go watch it. Really recommend it because that's where I took out the material to make this video today and share it with you guys. So again, Aaron Apke, go watch him. Phenomenal. If you know about him, then you know what I'm talking about. And if you haven't watched that video, definitely go watch it. So today, what I want to share is one of the questions that was asked in that video or that roundtable was about the transition into fourth density. I forgot what the question was really about, specifically, but it was something about the transition into fourth density and harvest and all this stuff. So there's a couple of concepts that we need to be familiar with if we want to understand what I want to share, because as I was listening to them, there was I wish I was there at the round table to to give my impressions onto this, because they were going around some really good points about what harvest is and all this stuff, but I don't know, I felt like I wanted to contribute to that, so this is my humble way of contributing to that into the collective consciousness, if you will. So again, if I pinpoint the specific part of the question, I'll leave it in a comment here. If not, you should really know when you get to that point if you're going to watch it, because they're talking about harvest, specifically. And the question was more about the transition collectively, not as we understand or usually get harvest in terms of individual harvest. Like we work ourselves to graduation into fourth density and so on. So it was more the collective planetary entity as it goes into fourth density and how the transition is going to play out. So this is where I got my insight and what I wanted to share. So again, let's recap on the most important concepts that we need to be aware of so this makes sense. The first one is fourth density. We should be familiar with this. Fourth density is the density of love and understanding, which we are going towards in our transition from third density. Very plain and simple. Now again, like I emphasized before, it has to do with the transition between the planet itself as it activates its fourth density sphere, and not the individual harvest that will happen. And some people will repeat and go to another planet. Other people will have to possibly come back, which I'll touch on, that specific way of how it's happening and how I see it as well. And also those who graduate to fourth density, whether it be positive or negative, they'll be out of this planet to another planet if they want to, or be here if they're positive. If they're negative, they have to go to another planet because this planet already polarized towards the positive. And that's one of the points that they touch on this in this video. The video that I'm talking about, Aaron Apke with the NLL research group. So that's the fourth density transition that we're talking about, not the one on individual, but the planet itself. So we must be familiar with that. Second is the planetary graduation or harvest is I think I just touched on that, in terms of how it'll happen. But and the way I want to bring it in is the planet itself, because we are the planet, and I know we're still stuck, in third density, thinking about the self and what's going to happen to us when we die and so on. But we're really focusing on the transition as a planet as a whole, which again we're still tethered to, and no matter what happens to us, we're still bound to this until the final graduation happens. But again, the last point is the seniority of incarnation, which is another concept that has been talked about. I forgot if it was in session 17. If you haven't watched that, go watch it here in my channel. I talked about that. It's one of the last questions in session 17, if I remember correctly. So everything should be, marked there. Probably 17 in the 40s. Session 17, question 40 something. In any case, seniority of incarnation is a process in which those entities that are incarnating now, namely the babies that we've seen, for the past decades, indigo, crystal, or whatever other denominations they have given them, they are pretty advanced souls that are incarnating now because they have a privilege, not over other people because of some sort of hierarchy that exists in the self-service way. This is just it's sort of like you have a better chance of graduating to fourth density, so you have a privilege of coming into incarnation. So this seniority of incarnation is the process that we're seeing now. These kids and babies who are just beyond our comprehension of intellect, which if you have been around babies lately, you have noticed that they seems to be smarter than we are. And I know this is an old topic, but it's been going on for a long time where babies are, exhibiting this patterns of knowledge and wisdom that is just beyond our understanding as we were babies. So again, that seniority of incarnation is going to play an important part in what I'm going to say. So 7 minutes into the video, I'm ready to start talking about this. You can see how pumped I am to share this, because I don't know, just the way I see it. So all right, my notes were that I said I thought about the planet transition into fourth density, or what we call space-time fourth density, in the vibrations in 1935 or thereabouts. This comes from Ra saying in 1981, where it was channeled, that approximately 40 years or 35 years, I forgot what the number was, but it ended up around 1935, the time where the sphere itself, the planet itself, enter into that vibration because of the alignment of the galaxy and other factors that we have speculated this is not said by Ra, but by other understandings of metaphysics and schools of mystery schools. So what's important here is that in 1935 or so, we entered a fourth density vibration, period. We also know that a 51% population service to others was required for the planet to basically sense and say, okay, I am a positive entity that wishes to go into fourth density. So that already happened. It's not well understood why Ra didn't comment on this, or as I am aware, no other Confederation entity has touched on this. It's something that we extrapolate, that the planet itself, because the majority of people, or the people, were positively oriented at the time that we went into fourth density vibrations, then the sphere itself, the entity that we become, let's call it Gaia. My channel is called Gaia Awakens, right? So Gaia, the spirit of Mother Earth, sensed that it was a positive being. So because of that, it went into a fourth density direction to polarize itself. And this is why we're having so much trouble and so on, which we're going to touch in a little bit, because I'm going to read you something that Kuo, another entity of the Confederation, which I'll give you a brief introduction to Kuo if you don't know who they are, he talked about. So this vibration that was needed was achieved in at least in the choice. The planet made its choice. We as individuals haven't. That's the turmoil that we're sensing in the planet right now, right? So I hope this makes sense so far. That's where we stand in the timeline, okay? Now, my take on this is that the seniority of incarnation, and I'll read it from my notes, maybe since in 2012 the harvest started, souls who are capable of working towards harvestability so they can begin to populate the planet as the harvest continues, and also help in polarization of the remaining souls. What does this mean? That's the seniority of incarnation is a mechanism or a process in which souls or entities are incarnating here because they saw, oh, okay, the planet basically polarized towards the positive, and it's waiting for its graduation or its four density transition. So the process, to me, this is where speculation comes, and I know in the spiritual communities there's been a lot of talk about the solar flash and some sun thing. I believe that most of that stuff is Orion influence. I'm not saying it's wrong or it's not right. I just think it's not going to happen that way. I believe there is a subtle transition that we're going through, and it's going to take however long. It could take a second, or it could take 700 years, like Ross said. But in any case, that's not for me to speculate. The point is that that process is being aided by the affluence of this incarnated higher consciousness souls, what I call the babies. They are coming in and they exhibit this wisdom. So these souls, like I said, are capable of working towards harvestability because that's the seniority of incarnation. They come here with, they don't need to work much to, say, graduate into fourth density. They came here because they said, we're basically harvestable, we're here to help. And that's what they're doing. So they can begin to populate the planet. That means that the vibration of the planet will increase. Plus, it'll also help the polarization of the remaining souls, namely us and others who are still in this process of seeking and understanding this whole process. This doesn't have to be now. Like I said, it's going to take some time. The Confederation keeps saying that it's very unlikely that we shift in a matter of, in a short time. It seems more like it's going to be a longer time. And I agree with that. Although there's always the possibility, like they say, of a sudden moment of inspiration in which we just all transform into fourth density. Now, how does that look? I'm going to read a little bit on a channeling. I'll leave the this transcript, the link, so you can read it in its entirety if you want to, in the description here as well. And this is cool. 2017, February 26th. I'm skipping, everything. I'm just going through to the explanation that they're talking about, because they're talking about harvest. And specifically, one of the questions that it was asked is, I'm just going to read really quick what Gary Bean, I believe it was Gary Bean, says Gary. So he says in 6324, this is the raw material, the questioner asks, then as the fourth density sphere is activated, there is heat energy being generated. I assume this heat energy is generated in the third density sphere only. Is this correct? Ra replied, this is quite correct. The experiential distortions of each dimension are discrete. This question I'm not going to cover, or the answer, because it has to do with the planetary changes and has to do with the friction that we're having. It's very interesting. You should go read it. But they're talking about the planetary changes, climate change, volcanoes, earthquakes, and so on. Why is that happening? Spoiler alert, it's just because we're still in division and separateness. So that is all being translated by the planet as, excessive heat that needs to be liberated. So it's a very, butcher way to explain what Kua said here. But the other question is, Ra in session 40, question 10, they say the harbingers of four density vibrations were approximately 45 of your years ago. That's what I explained that happened, what do they say, 45? So yeah, about 1936 or so. So they say the energy is vibrating more intensely through the 40-year period preceding the final movement of vibratory matter through the quantum leap, as you would call it. Then Gary, having read this, asks, the question is, as Rod describes it, there is apparently a quantum shift whereby third density definitely ends and fourth density definitely begins. All four density bodies in the new environment inhabiting a qualitatively, discretely different environment when the time and the conditions are right, is this discrete boundary crossed in a single global moment, after which time the third density sphere is inactive for some time while the early four density beings get their bearings. That's the question. So is asking more specifically what's going to happen when this discrete boundary, which they're talking about in the near future, what's going to happen, with third density and fourth density. Now, Kuo goes and explains the planetary changes and all that stuff, and then he goes, this is the part that I want to, match or kind of merge with what I was talking about in terms of how this process is going to be in the four density transition as we go through this process, which is ongoing right now. Harvest four density vibrations and activation of four density sphere. Okay, so they explain the whole planetary changes, and then they say, quote, as far as the discrete movement of the consciousness complexes of the peoples of your planet, there is at this time, and has been for a number of years, the birthing into incarnation of those entities that have both the third and fourth density bodies activated, so that there is indeed a new breed of entity upon the planetary surface at this time. This number is increasing daily. These entities have much more ability to affect the consciousness of this planet at this time, and the consciousness of those about them. For they have the, shall we say, need to aid in the harvest, which is a basic need that is at the foundation of the reason of their incarnating here. It is a great honor and privilege to be allowed this early in incarnation. I'll finish reading. Thus, these entities, as they continue to incarnate upon the planets, will provide the body complexes through their own mating processes for other entities of even higher vibration to incarnate. So that this is a process which, in your time, will seem to take more time than a discrete movement in the blink of an eye. There will be a number of years which are indeterminate at this time due to the difficulty of your peoples in making discrete choices. Shall we say, that will be necessary for the progression of the physical vehicle and the mind and spirit vehicles to become more blended into a vehicle which is purely fourth density. Thus, this will be a gradual transformation as far as the third to fourth density mind-body-spirit complex transition is determined. So, they finish with something else there that I'm not going to read, but let me see if it's important. I don't think so. We would further add that there are many entities at this time that are working very diligently, both in third density level and upon the higher realms within the planetary entity itself, to aid the transition into fourth density. So there's a lot of help there too. But see, with these two paragraphs, you can see that the process that's happening is that these entities that are incarnating here are aiding the planets into the four density shift that needs to happen. So this is the whole process that we're seeing. Because these entities come from higher consciousness, they are able to blend their own vibrations, like they said, and in their mating, meaning that as they procreate, say my son and its following generation and the other, are going to purify a lot more the not only the planet by their own vibrations, but the physical complex, meaning the bodies that other entities are being incarnated in because of their, this could go, into DNA, activation and all this stuff that we can see, in the spiritual communities. But this is the process, that we're going through. So in creating better vehicles, and better meaning more aligned with four density vibrations, then they are aiding the planet as well as with their own vibrations. And of course, doing their own work here, which is, I wouldn't say it's completely necessary, because that seems to generate the idea that we have to push everybody to be spiritual right now. I don't think that's not even an option. I mean, you don't become spiritual because somebody else. In fact, you don't become spiritual, period. You just stop being egocentric in that way. You are spiritual already. So it's how you identify yourself. But in any case, the point is that this influx of new incarnations are becoming more and more prevalent in the coming years, just because of the whole vibration of the planet, the orientation, and so on. So this was my realization when I heard this question, and Gary, Austin, Jim, and Aaron talking about it. And I wish I could have been there, to add, not everything that I said here, because that would have taken like half of the whole interview or roundtable. But in any case, it just when what I thought, and I thought it was something to add there, to understand a little bit more what's this process that we're going through, which is called harvest, for density transition, and so on, and at least another angle to see how new entities or new incarnations of entities are becoming a lot more conscious of this simply by being here. And like I said, this is a big highlight to anybody who is around kids right now. You can see that they seem to have just a natural tendency to be more intelligent and wise in general. Not so much intelligent, because that's just a natural mechanic into them, but the wisdom that they bring in, and that's just a beautiful thing. So that's all I wanted to share. I was just very excited to have thought about this and piece all this together, and I just wanted to share it because you guys, of course, are familiar with all these concepts and the whole theme of the philosophy of the Law of One. So as always, thank you so much for watching. I hope this added some value and a little bit more insight into what you understand in terms of our spiritual growth as a planet in general, and individually as well. So thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.